Welcome to the Scottsdale Top Docs podcast, where we share a mission to improve access to care and prevention, as well as planning for the future. Our goal is to help people live healthier, happier, more informed lives. We believe that healthcare isn't a job, but a calling to serve, and the best care begins with conversation. Now on to today's episode.
Hello, welcome to Scottsdale Top Docs podcast. I'm Shana, and I'm happy today to interview Dr. Greg Law with Laws of Motion Physical Therapy.
Thanks for having me.
So you're a doctor of physical therapy. What does that mean exactly?
So a doctor of physical therapy was a kind of a progression of our profession. Back in, I think, around 2010, 2011, when I started PT school, they really started pushing going from a master's program to more of a doctoral level program. They did that because they wanted to start allowing PTs to see direct access patients, meaning they don't need to go through their referring physician, whether that's the primary care doctor or a pain management doctor. They can come direct to a physical therapist if they're having issues.
That makes a lot of sense because for some people, it takes them 2 months to get into their primary care doctor. And if your shoulder hurts, that's probably the first place you're going to go.
Yeah. 2 months down in the back is no good.
So you can see patients without a referral from their primary care doctor. Do you take insurance?
We actually do not accept insurance at Laws of Motion. If people have commercial insurance and they want to submit a super bill, if they have any out-of-network benefits, they can submit those to their insurance company. We provide that for them, but we do not directly bill insurance.
And how does your physical therapy practice differ on a day-to-day basis compared to a practice that does take insurance?
Sure. So something that we wanted to do to kind of separate ourselves from other clinics was to step away from the insurance world, so that way we could actually work one-on-one with all of our clients that come through the door. So when you come to Laws of Motion, you get 50 minutes one-on-one with a doctor of physical therapy that takes you through some of the manual treatments, the exercise, the educational aspect. Everything is with your provider. You're not passed off to assistive personnel.
Well, that sounds like a higher quality service.
We definitely see that people get better faster that way. And we typically see people maybe once a week, sometimes twice a week, whereas your standard outpatient care, you might go 2 or 3 times a week to the physical therapy appointments, which when you start looking at time throughout the week and you're going for 1 hour each time, hour and a half each time, you're looking at 3 to 4.5 hours of your week versus 50 minutes. And you may not be progressing as fast as you would with us.
So you brought up manual therapy. Can you tell me more about manual therapy and what its benefits are? Is it just a fancier name for massage?
No, not quite. So manual therapy, there are several branches of manual therapy that we do with our practice. So one is like a mechanical aspect. So does something move? Does it have an efficient movement to that, or does it not move at all? And so what we want to do is actually help with some of that mobility aspect with our hands. So they maybe they start on the table on their back or on their stomach, but we get them up and we're doing hands-on treatment while you're standing, while you're moving, while you're doing the activity that is painful or that you want to get back to. So that way we can treat the structures through a movement process. So that's one aspect that's very different from massage. A second aspect is that we also do what's called neuromuscular facilitation. So,
yeah, what's that?
So neuromuscular facilitation is basically you're working on the initiation, the strength, and the endurance of these muscle contractions.
Does that help with control?
Yeah, so that all plays into our control and our movement patterns. So if you watch a baby develop, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have 2 little ones at home. And so you watch them develop and they go from just laying there, not really doing anything to they start to move their eyes around and their head starts to go. And then they start to do some reaching and then you get the roll and then you start to go down the chain. That is all part of the developmental sequence that should be ingrained in every adult. But sometimes when you have an injury or you have, movement issues, you kind of lose some of that ability to move properly. So
yes.
The neuromuscular facilitation aspect is just a way to facilitate someone's movement. So that way we can pair that with some exercise to really get them back doing the sports and the activities that they love doing.
I was really surprised when I had a recent scapular injury. I called it a rogue scapula.
Yeah.
And most of the problem was just control. And so I was just fascinated by that because not being a physical therapist, sometimes you think the problem's always something's weak. And you don't realize that it could be like a muscular imbalance or a control problem.
Right.
So it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Are there some specific specialty areas that you focus on in your practice?
Yeah. So I treat a lot of golfers. So I treat anywhere from the guy that just wants to play for a longer period of time. He's 80 and he wants to continue to play because he loves going out with his buddies and hitting the links versus, you have people that I treat that are on the Corn Ferry Tour or these guys that are kind of on their way up and trying to make the PGA. So obviously we're treating them for very different reasons.
Sure.
One is more of a longevity aspect. The other one's more of a performance side of thing. So golfers are a lot of what I treat. My wife is also part of our practice and she does women's health, pelvic floor. She has a pre and postpartum.
That is much needed. I can attest.
Yeah. A very avoided or a very poorly treated population.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
so she really got into that after having our second kid. And so she focuses a lot on pelvic floor treatments, but also we treat a lot of just your general orthopedic type stuff, anywhere from, like I said, people just trying to get out of pain to improve performance.
Great. And what are two really, well, actually I had a lot of questions about this.
Yeah.
So my first one is what issues do you typically see with golfers? And what are some tips that you have for golfers to not have to go in to see you because they've prevented an injury?
Sure. So the biggest thing that we see in with golfers of all ages is low back pain.
Oh.
And how we treat that really depends on the person, right? Everyone that walks through our door, if they have low back pain, I'm probably treating them different than the person before. There's not a cookie cutter approach to low back pain. It's really specific on the person and their movement. So what I typically do is there's an assessment through the Titleist Performance Institute that looks at 16 movement screens, and you can take people through there and really start to pick out pieces of the body that don't move well. And so this TPI screen was actually developed so that there's good communication between a golf coach, a PT, and a trainer, because there is always this, hey, this guy, I want him to swing like Tiger Woods.
Mm-hmm.
But that guy doesn't move like Tiger Woods.
Right.
And so you start trying to hammer this square peg into a round hole, and then people started getting injured versus saying like, hey, they're having trouble with XYZ move. Maybe they can't get into rotation very well. So we need to figure out what exercises we can give them to help with rotation. So the biggest swing issue that I see that has the biggest correlation to low back pain is what's called a reverse spine angle.
Oh.
And so what that means is that when a golfer goes into their backswing, they kind of lean towards their target versus staying above the ball. And so what that typically indicates is that's a upper body dominant movement pattern. And so then the upper body is doing a lot of the work, and then the lumbar spine's trying to catch up. And so you can get some of those low back injuries if they demonstrate a reverse spine angle. So ways to prevent that are working on some core strength and stability.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a right-handed golfer, I want to work on the ability for my right leg to be able to rotate into what we call internal rotation better.
Sure.
And we also want to be able to teach them how to load more properly into the lower extremity, the leading leg. So that way they don't lean towards a target. They stay over top of the ball, and they can actually get better power and speed from their swing as well as avoiding low back pain.
So if you're someone who recently came here from the north, like I did, and you're just now getting into golf, but you really like it, would it be a good idea to understand some of these biomechanics and strengthening before you even get going?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the better efficiency you can have in any sport really, but with golf, like you have these people that are all ranges of skill level. And so if they've never swung a club a day in their life and they're super stiff in their thoracic spine and their hips and they can't rotate well, golf is a rotational sport. So we have to be able to get you moving better and more efficiently to avoid any of those injuries.
Is the rotational aspect of the sport the reason why back injuries are so common? I always wondered, as a non-golfer, non-physical therapist, why Tiger Woods kept injuring his back. And is that part of it? Is that it's rotational and that's a hard position for the back?
Some of it is with the rotational aspect of it. There's so many different swings out there now, so it's hard to say why one swing is more than the other. But they're starting to teach now. Some of these newer golfers are getting a lot more of a side bend into their swing to really start to get more power. And it wasn't until Tiger came around when people actually started treating golf like a sport and like training for it, right?
Yeah.
Because before it was just like, you show up to the course and you swing and you're like, oh, this is what I do in my retirement. I don't have to work out.
Yeah.
But now you look at these guys on the tour and they're crushing the ball because they're starting to get into more of the performance side of things where they're getting into, better rotation. And so yeah, it can be harder on the back, especially when you're trying to create all this torque to create as much club head speed as you can. And so that's where all this movement efficiency is really beneficial because you're going to just transfer force a lot better that way.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And do you have like a book called Unlock Your Golf Swing?
Yeah, I wrote it's an ebook on our website. So lawsofmotionpt.com. Where you can go in and actually download the ebook, and it goes through all the movement swing or all the movement faults that you can see, and then actually has some example exercises that are linked to YouTube videos.
That's fantastic.
So all you have to do is click on them, and it takes you through step by step how to do the exercises, and so it gives someone the ability to kind of like start working on things before they're a problem.
And it's free. Wow, that is such a great resource to offer.
And oddly, it's lawsofmotionpt.com. I went to try to get Laws of Motion, but apparently it's a women's fashion line. So that one's, don't go to lawsofmotion.com unless you want women's clothes. Right. Yeah.
It's tricky. Tell me how you analyze someone's golf swing.
So we have, like I mentioned before, the Titleist performance assessment that we'll do. And so we'll go through, there's 16 movement screens that we can take people through. And based on those 16 screens, we can kind of tell what a person's swing is going to look like. So they're going to have a propensity to, hang back in their swing or come up over the top with their swing or, all these different golf terminology. We can kind of describe what their swing looks like without even seeing them swing based on how they move. I'm
just so surprised at how much of a science there is to this. I had no idea so much went into golf and a golf swing.
Yeah, so it's a fun process because like to see someone's look like, oh yeah, I do have this problem, and it's like it's purely a mechanical issue for them.
Yeah,
and so then we can actually use some. We have some apps that we use on our phone that we can actually. I'll go to a range with someone and we'll do a slow-mo video of their swing, and we can actually look at, are they coming down properly? What do they look like in their backswing? What's kind of holding them up? So I've done some treatment sessions on course where it's like we'll actually go to the course, to go to the range with them and say like, hey, this is what we saw in the clinic. This is exactly what you're doing on the range. This is what we need to do to fix that so you can, be Tiger Woods.
It starts with tremendous confidence. And I mean, somebody who comes to this thing not as a person who's taken a class or two, but somebody who's literally got their PhD. But that alone is not enough. I would say the second ingredient that Dr. Amber brings to the party is some empathy, but also the ability to nudge people and to get them going. And then the third piece that she brings, which is equally as important, is such a friendly demeanor and a smile. And she lights up our life every time she comes.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, the other thing I was really interested in more is, peripartum, postpartum, pelvic floor rehab. Seems like such a huge unmet need. Can you tell me more about that program that your business offers?
Yeah, so it's a program that my wife developed. Like I said, we have 2 kids. And so after the second one, she's just like, there's got to be more out there, more help for women that are postpartum. And so she developed the program to start working with them to, get back some of their pelvic floor strength. Because a lot of times we'll see that either the pelvic floor is overactive or underactive.
Yeah.
And it's an issue either way. So, women who have urinary incontinence after pregnancies,
huge problem,
right?
And a lot of women get, they get their pelvic floors injured during birth. They can have stage 4 tears. So I just think this is so important. I remember from my experience, I was told that everything was just going to be fine afterwards. And that's not true.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you for meeting that need.
Yeah. So she's done a great job developing that. And then she also does some stuff prior to having the baby in order to help open the hips up a little bit to try to prevent some of the tearing that some women experience.
Oh, that is fantastic.
Yeah.
How long is the wait to get booked to see her for things, for peripartum care and pelvic floor rehab?
I mean, we try to get people in as quickly as we can. So it kind of varies. Here in Scottsdale, we have the nice summer months coming up. So our schedule lightens up and it's easier to get in the summer.
So it's a good time. It's a good time to get in.
So book now. Yeah. But yeah, we try to get people in as quickly as we can because we know people are hurting and they want to get back to stuff that they love to do. And so as much accommodation as we can make for people, we try to do that.
Fantastic. So are there some common misconceptions that you hear about physical therapy that you'd like to clarify here today?
Oh, sure. Gosh.
We'll start with 3.
3.
Yeah.
Okay. I almost when I go to networking events, I almost hesitate to say that I'm a physical therapist to people because I feel like everyone already has a connotation of what physical therapy is, whether that they're in the standard outpatient, world where it's like, hey, I saw the PT for 5 minutes. And then, you have the PTs that, maybe they're a part of home health and they're like, oh yeah, I had a PT come to my mom's house and they just, had her do some marching and some exercise and they left. Or, I had a PT after my hip was replaced and they made me walk around and, walk around the hospital before I could leave. So there's such a wide range of what PTs can do. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions is that you have this picture of what a PT is and you think that all PTs are that picture.
Right.
And so you have so many things from, people who are in a skilled nursing facility to a home health to more of the performance side of things.
Right. And you're more the performance side?
Yeah. So we tend to be more on the performance side of things and just injury recovery and stuff like that. So, what we do versus what other PTs in our professions do that are in the different realms of PT is just completely different. So I would say that's the biggest one that I see is the being pigeonholed into a certain thing.
Yes.
The other one is that, and I can't tell you the number of people that I've had where they're like, I tried PT and it didn't work. It's and it's basically like with any other healthcare provider, you have to find your person.
Absolutely.
And if you don't find your person, it might not work. They might, you might not jive with what they're saying. You might not, get the proper care that you're wanting or need to hear. And sometimes just trying a different provider and hearing the same thing, but just in a different package can make such a big difference for people. So that's another thing and that's actually the population I love treating are the people that are like, yeah, I tried PT and it didn't work for me. And it's like, well, why? I went and did the same exercises and they had me doing, the same stuff for 10 weeks. And then I was like, yeah, I just kind of gave up and it didn't work.
Right.
It's like, well, let's think outside the box a little bit. I think with PT, that's part of what I love is that the more that I learn, the more that I realize I don't know.
Oh, isn't that the truth? I feel like I'm dumber now than I was in med school.
Exactly. And I wish I could go back 10 years and treat the people that I treated when I was first in the beginning, because I would treat them completely different than what I did, when I was a new grad.
Oh, wow.
And so I think just continuing to be able to learn and really start to think outside of the box. I mean, the human anatomy is crazy. There's so many things that I still don't know about it. And that's what makes it fun. And so, going back to my point about, PT didn't work. I have so many experiences where someone's they're, coming to see me because they've seen 3 other PTs, they're having sciatic nerve pain.
Yeah.
And, rather than working through just on the back and down the leg, we're working through some of the visceral structures through the abdominal area to really get into the nerve root area.
Yeah.
I even have a lady who was having unrelenting right leg pain, and we treated up at her sphenoid or in her temples, and that relieved her leg pain completely. And it's because of the nervous system connection to the sphenoid that is one continuous system through our body. So there's so many ways to tackle PT. And so that's where it's like when people say, oh, it didn't work for me, it's like, well, let's try a different roadmap.
Well, I feel like the way the healthcare business is going, you're seeing more and more places trying to do a factory productivity model that it's looking less and less like skilled physical therapy and more like people are just being put through an obstacle. Like you do the bike for 10 minutes, you stretch for 10 minutes, and you do some leg squats, which versus actual skilled therapy, which is incredibly beneficial and useful.
Yeah.
I've been through it a few times.
Yes, sounds like it.
So I'm a believer. Are people ever confused about what you do versus what a chiropractic does?
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of those questions of like, what are opinions of chiropractors? Like what kind of stuff, is it good to have PT and chiropractic at the same time? Like how much is too much treatment?
Exactly.
So we get a lot of those questions. And I would say, it really depends on the client. Like if their body can handle a lot of body work, then, I'm okay with having a chiropractor working with me to try to help that person. But sometimes you get too many cooks in the kitchen and you have a lot of people saying different things. And then the PT, the client's just like, well, I don't know who to believe. And this person's telling me to do this. You're telling me to do something different. This other person's telling me to do this. And so I think sometimes when people get confused and they get down this path where there's so many providers giving input and they're all doing it in trying to help the client, they're not doing it maliciously, but it can become very tough. So I would say, try a path first. If that doesn't work, try someone else on that path or look at but don't do like 8 different treatments at the same time. Because then we don't know what's helped.
Working.
Yeah, what helps.
Those are great tips. What are maybe the top 3 conditions you treat? We know golfers.
Sure.
And your wife focus on pelvic floor rehab. What are a couple of other common medical conditions you treat that would be a good fit for your practice?
Let's see. I mean, I treat everything from like I have a bunch of distance runners, so half marathon runners, triathletes, younger tennis players, horseback riders, all the any sport you can imagine.
Would I be pigeonholing you if I said you were like a sports medicine physical therapist?
I mean, that's kind of the path in terms of like the performance side of things that we want to be down. It's not, when I want people, when they come to our clinic, I want them to be ready to do some exercise and to actually work. And so what our typical sessions look like is we're going to do some hands-on stuff, but then we want to start to load the tissue and start to make someone work. So if someone's goal is to run a marathon and I have them do, 3 sets of 10 squats, and then that's their exercise, like that's not really going to translate well.
Right.
So we have to challenge them. We have to make them work in order to, see the improvement in terms of the pain reduction, but then also continue to progress them back to sport.
In addition to athletes, do you do any chronic low back pain, knee replacement, hip replacement rehab?
Oh yeah, we do a lot of that stuff as well. And like I said, I actually really like some of the patients that come in that have just had chronic pain that are like, yeah, I've tried this provider. I've been to 4 PTs, I've been to this. And, it's always funny to like see their expression. You can kind of tell on their face. They're like, I don't know where else to go. Yeah. And they feel kind of defeated. And then it's great to see the turnaround when we can actually be the ones that help them make that jump.
Is there a certain type of chronic pain that you feel like you're particularly effective with, that you notice you're able to turn them around more than other providers, like chronic back pain, or is it more chronic knee pain, chronic shoulder pain?
I would say we have a lot more experience with like just chronic low back pain.
Sure.
Both my wife and I we used to work at Barrow Brain and Spine for a long time.
Yeah.
So we've seen, everything from people trying to avoid surgeries to, multi-level fusions from their mid-back all the way to their pelvis. So there's so many things in between there that play into just chronic low back pain, whether that's the actual mechanical aspect of it or, we always talk about diet, we talk about sleep, we talk about all sorts of stuff in our PC sessions because all that plays into the human.
Absolutely.
And who's in front of you.
Do you see any patients with central sensitization driving their back pain?
We see some of that stuff. And then a lot of that is, we can treat that through almost what's called movement awareness type stuff to where,
okay.
If it hurts to raise my arm completely over my head, maybe I stop a little short of that and I just continue to work on showing my body that, hey, it's okay to move in this direction.
So more of a graded exercise progression. Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. And if you had, I know sensitization patients are more resistant to treatment, but if you had pretty good luck with the back painers with sensitization?
Yeah. It really, it's, you kind of start to peel the onion back.
Yes.
Right? Because you'll find one thing, it'll get better, and then something else pops up, and then it's a very cardinal sign of someone that has central sensitization.
Isn't that the truth?
And so I think some of it is like you kind of switch your role from being a physical therapist to more of like hey, let's you
a multidisciplinary medical provider.
Exactly, and so we're trying everything we can to help that person get back to what they want to do. And so, there's so many layers to someone's pain. And I think the more we can educate ourselves as medical providers, it gives us a chance to educate the patient more.
Fantastic. Well, I will definitely keep you in mind if I have anyone with back pain with central sensitization that you're ready to take it on.
Awesome. Thank you.
How do people get a hold of you to make an appointment?
So they can go to our website. So it's lawsofmotionpt.com. And we have a button there. You can actually schedule online or we also have the contact information on there as well. So that's the easiest way because that way they can look at our schedule and get in whenever they can make that happen.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you, Dr. Greg Law, for coming and teaching us about how to improve performance and where to go for good pelvic rehab care.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Efforts like physical therapy pay great dividends when it comes to improving the range of motion, when it comes to improving the quality of a person's life.
You know how to change the way of life for people, which is a wonderful thing to do, to know you're doing that. Because I'm sure that without your help, I can do more than I thought I ever could. It's very important to have a way of moving around. Maybe you're not doing much of it moving, but you're moving. And I give you an A+. So I appreciate you very much. And that's the truth.